Okay, good evening, everyone. My name is Julius Spain, President of Arlington Branch NAACP, and welcome to our first meeting for 2022, Journal Membership Meeting. Again, thank you for taking time out of your very busy schedules. I know everyone's just doing so much, but it's just a privilege and an honor to not only serve as president, but to be here with you for a brief period of time tonight, hour and a half, hopefully, and we'll stop it there. With that being said, we're going to go ahead and get started. This is the opening of our meeting. Madam Secretary, will you please start with our roll call?
Certainly. President Julius Spain, he is present. First Vice President Kent Carter. Kent Carter. Second Vice President Sherrice Kerns. Sherrice Kerns. Third Vice President Michael Hemminger.
Present.
Treasurer Roy Austin.
Present.
Assistant Treasurer Adriana Spain.
Present.
I'm the Secretary Wanda Younger, present. Assistant Secretary Laurel Langhorne. Laurel Langhorne. Executive Committee at Large, Karen Nightingale. Karen Nightingale. Executive Committee at Large, James Younger. James Younger. I saw his name on the call. Executive Committee at Large, Simone Walker.
Present.
At Large Member, Carolyn Kane.
She's not with us tonight.
Communications, Leah Matterall. Leah Matterall. Criminal Justice, Heather Kelly.
Present.
Economic Development and Labor, Megan Brew.
Present.
Economic Development and Labor, Maya Jones. Maya Jones. Environmental and Climate Justice, Gabrielle Cantor.
Present.
Environmental and Climate Justice, Kenyatta Clemens. Kenyatta Clemens. Housing, Kellen Macbeth.
Present.
Legal Redress, Brendan Meehan. Brendan Meehan. Membership, Keisha Tinsley.
She's won't be us tonight.
Political Action, Jamie Abrams. Jamie Abrams. Political Action, Megan Reasor.
Present.
Religious Affairs, Reverend Davis.
Present.
Scholarship, Jill DeWitt. Jill DeWitt. Special Events, Marvin Nels. Marvin Nels. And I believe I saw First Vice President Kent Carter.
He joined, and the second VP joined as well.
Okay. That
And James Younger, I'm present.
Thank you. That concludes the roll call.
Okay, thank you very much, Madam Secretary. Let's go back for just a second. I saw that Pastor Davis joined us. Let's go ahead and for a minute to have a moment of prayer. Pastor Davis, could you lead us, please? So in some prayer. Pastor Davis. I know she was just here with us. Roy Younger, excuse me, Roy Austin. Would you mind?
I wouldn't dare do that. If you talking.
I'm going to ask you, please mute yourselves. Pastor Davis, are you still with us? Okay.
Yes, I am.
All right, yeah. Could you open us up with some prayer, please?
Absolutely. Let us go to the Lord in prayer. For all that you have done and for this present moment in time, we pause to give thanks. We ask for your blessings upon each person in each family that's represented tonight and upon Arlington and our communities. This we pray and believe is done in your name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. I'm going to call for a motion to suspend with rules and accept the agenda as is. Any member of the exec committee or any active member may make that motion to suspend of rules.
I make a motion, we suspend the rules.
Second motion.
Properly moved and seconded that we suspend the rules and accept the agenda as set forth. Are there any questions? Are there any questions? Are there any questions? All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed have the same right. Ayes have it, motion carried. All right, we're into the agenda. Let's go ahead and get started and take off the spotlight. Mr. Austin, we're going to go ahead and start with our financial report. Let me get this up here. Me and the secretary.
Okay, as you can see, our beginning balance was in the checking account was $21,910.17. We received $3,219.26 in receipts, donations. In expenditures, so a total of $4,421.26. Our ending balance on December 31st in checking was $20,708.17. We had no activity in our business savings account. The total there is $841.39. And on December 31st, the total amount in our accounts was $202,549.56. That is the conclusion of this report.
Mr. President, if you're speaking, you're on mute.
Thank you, Mr. Young, Roy Austin, for that report. Any member of the NAACP in this branch who has questions about report can meet with the or reach out to the treasurer to get more specifics. This report was approved and accepted by the exec committee yesterday. We're going to move on to, and these are your finances. We're going to move to the next report. Madam Secretary, I know Keisha's out, but this slide is with our membership. You want to talk about that?
Sure. Today, we actually reached our 1,000 member goal that we set for last year. So that is a huge accomplishment for the branch. There was another slide that was shared with all the members who registered for the Zoom meeting tonight that lists all of the people who have either joined or renewed their membership with the branch since our Freedom Fund banquet, which was on October the 28th of last year. And there's a list of all the people who have renewed since then. This also shows there's 2 new Silver Life members, fully paid members since the Freedom Fund as well. And that is myself and also the Honorable Commonwealth Attorney Parissa Degani Tafty. She is also a Silver Life member who's paid in full. And we also have a few Silver Life subscribing members since the Freedom Fund banquet, and that is Kimberly Phillip and Arlington Parents for Education.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Secretary, for that update. And I'm going to ask that, you know, those of you, I know our membership chair has not been with us much. She is a bit under the weather. She also unfortunately, like many of us, I included, ended up getting that bug called COVID. And she's on her way to recovery. With that being said, I want to go back to membership. Yeah, we were hoping to reach that 1,000 member goal by the end of December. We were around 950, 960, but we've seen in the past couple of weeks, and I think even over the past few days, we've had a number of folks join the NAACP. There are some questions in the chat. We'll try to get to those. I'm seeing one from Juan. If you're a subscribing life member and your name is not listed, who would you reach out to? So this is how membership works, right? And the best way to do this is to go to the NAACP national website, right? And register and renew your membership. We are tied into national, our branches, and we can see real time anyone who joins with our branch. You can also download an application and you can mail it to our branch. Keeping in mind, if you do that, the secretary takes it along with the membership chair. They have to go into the system called Salesforce, send it to national, and that takes a little bit longer. But to answer your question, Juan, reach out, send us an email. The secretary will reply, or the membership chair, or our new assistant who is on the call. Laurel, you're with us, right? I think she finally joined. Show your face, Laurel.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. I am on the call.
So Laurel is with us, and she's our new assistant secretary. So yeah, and that's how it works, right? For membership. As you may also know, the NAACP is no longer doing the Crisis magazine, which used to be hard copy, right? So NAACP National has made a conscious decision, which I think is really good, to do everything electronically. So if you are a member who chose to get the magazine, you should be receiving that electronic version. All right, we're going to have a jam-packed meeting here, and I'm not going to see we're at 7:12. I have a few minutes. I don't have too much to go and mention tonight, with the exception of, one, as in all meetings, we'll observe strict decorum in our meetings. We will ensure that, even in the chat function, which we enable, unlike some other places that disable it, you are free to make your comments and engage with members on this call, but we ask that you be respectful, okay? Be respectful to each other. And if at any time, either the secretary or any of the members, the VPs notice that something is getting a little out of hand, they'll notify the host or the co-host, and we will gladly perhaps send you a message and then say, we'll see you the next time. All right, so that also brings me to a conversation that I know is going on in the community about the NAACP, and I think it's important as president that I remind people that the NAACP, a long storied treasured history of civil rights and social justice since 1909, that we are on the front lines of social justice and civil rights, right? We will not waver. We will not succumb to any outside influence, right, that may be perceived or ill will intended to come to this branch and take us off of our mission and objectives, right? My goal as the president and as the VPs is to protect the NAACP and what we stand for. So I say all that to say that trust and believe that we here, the leadership team of the NAACP, will be ever so vigilant in ensuring that this NAACP doesn't turn into a mere extension of something that's not the NAACP, okay? That will not happen. We have, again, a strong foundation. We have a rock solid framework, if you may, whether that's bylaws or constitutions. And if you don't believe in the mission and objectives of the NAACP, this may not be the spot, right? So, but we all are welcome. We have 27 odd committees that you could be a part of, right? Some you may agree with, some you may not agree with. That's the beauty of the NAACP. But our body of work is broad, right? And we engage on many fronts. It's not just, criminal justice or education or healthcare or, environment. It runs deep. Religious affairs, right? Housing. We run the full gamut, and that's where we can use your help, right? The members that are on our committees are all volunteers. No one gets paid. No one. They're taking time out of their schedule to do this work. And where we used to be, those of you that have been in Arlington for a while, and you look at where we're at today, a lot has been accomplished because of good teamwork, right? Every day is not a perfect day, but where you tell me a place on this planet where you can find that. I may give you a penny. That doesn't happen. So we have tried our best to let peace and harmony prevail and move forward on the best interest of our members and the brand of the NAACP. So with that, I am going to actually cut my speech, what I have to say, a little bit short so we can get ahead of the schedule today. I look forward to this year. You know, I'm going on my 4th year as president, my 2nd term. Came to this branch in 2010, so a little bit over a decade, and it's been a fun-filled ride, highs, lows, and for those of you that's been around and saw this branch, and I see you on here, Margaret Gooden, you know what it used to be like many years ago, right? So as we evolve, right, into a this nonprofit organization, we have to set mechanisms in place so we can survive, right? So whenever the day comes that JD Spain leaves or the VP leaves, or we get new leadership in here, that everything just doesn't fall apart, right? Continuity, succession planning, all that good stuff. And we need you. We need all of our members who are true to the NAACP to come on board, work, agitate a little bit, but at the same time be diplomatic, right? Be respectful, but do the work, right? And that's what it requires: work, and a lot of sacrifice, a lot of sacrifice. So again, with that being said, I'm going to start. We have our first VP, our second VP, and our third VP on the call. Again, I'm going to let them say a few words. I'm also going to need tonight, we need to do an audit of our records for calendar year 2021. We already have 1 volunteer. So if you are an active member and you have some kind of financial savvy background, CPA, right, and you would like to put your name in the hat for consideration to serve on our audit committee, which is appointed by myself and conferred by the executive committee, please put your name in the chat or send us an email. We will reach out to you. We need at least 2 more people. Your job will be to audit our financial records from last year and make a report to the executive committee next month. Okay, so we're looking, and that's also the other thing of this organization. If you're a member, you can actively participate in many ways, but we will vet you a little bit now. We're just not going to let everybody come in and look at the records. So come on in, put your name in the chat and come help us out. Mike, 4 more years? I don't think so. Thank you very much. All right, we're going to go over to first VP Kent Carter. Ken, are you on the line?
I am. Thank you, Mr. President, and welcome everyone to our meeting.
Can we see your face, sir? Because I haven't seen you in a little while. I'm just
welcome everyone. I wanted to thank everyone for coming to tonight's meeting. Super excited for it. Wanted to go ahead and thank the guests that are coming out today to speak to us. Go ahead and thank them in advance because I know they have super busy schedules. So thank them for coming out and speaking about the important things that they're doing here in the community and on the school board. So really looking forward to that and looking to another amazing year. So thank you guys so much, and I yield my time.
Thank you, Mr. VP, first VP. We'll turn over to our second VP, Sherrice Kerns.
Good evening, everybody. Can you hear me okay?
Mm-hmm.
I'm second VP Sherrice Kerns, and it's really great to be here tonight. Thanks for everyone coming out and if you're new, getting to know what we do and how we do it. And if you're not new, Happy New Year. It's great to see you. I don't have much to share. I just wanted to kind of put a finer point on what JD said. The NAACP, for people who may not know who we are and what we do, it is a civil rights organization, and our primary purpose is to seek to end discrimination based on race, based on ethnicity. We are fighting a fight that is re-emerging. We have a new administration at the state level. And that is going to be interesting over the next 4 years. So it'll be great if you're here to fight that battle and ensure that people who are marginalized historically have opportunities. Then we want you here. Come on in and get busy. And I'm looking forward to hearing from both Katie and it's Barbara, right? And Barbara. Hi, Barbara. How are you? Look forward to hearing from them this evening too.
Thank you, Madam Second VP. We're going to go to our third VP, Mike Hemminger.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. I want to just congratulate the branch on getting to 1,000 members. That was a big goal of ours last year. And also 100 people on tonight's call when there's so many other things you could be doing. So thank you so much for joining. I wanted to provide a little bit of inspiration and encouragement, but before I do, I just want to kind of talk about the current state of things. We often hear people say we've come so far, but we have far to go. Here in Arlington, we're still being over-policed in our community. We're still seeing that the county's not doing enough, if you ask me, when it comes to affordable housing. Our minority businesses, our small businesses are still leaving at an alarming rate. I'm not sure that enough people are paying attention to that. Black and brown people, they're still dying at disparate rates compared to their white counterparts. Lastly, before I close, I wanted to say I attended the Wakefield PTA meeting this past weekend, and I noticed that, school board member Kader is on. So I want to thank you for your efforts there, but our teachers, they're struggling. Our parents, they are overwhelmed. Our students, they are hurting too. So we have come so far, but we still have far to go. And so I want to read 2 quotes and I'll pass it back to you, Mr. President. The first one, it's one of my favorites. It's by Martin Luther King. We just celebrated his birthday and we're getting ready to go into Black History Month. But it's the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. So just take a moment to think about that. Things don't always happen as quickly as we'd like them to. The arc of the moral universe is long, but it always bends towards justice. One more from Martin Luther King. You can tell I'm a big admirer of him. It says, if you can't fly, then run. If you can't run, then walk. If you can't walk, then crawl. But whatever you do, keep moving forward. And so that's my advice to all the members on tonight. Sometimes we can't always fly. The tensions are there right now with COVID. We can't always move as quickly as we can, but no matter what we do, always keep moving forward. So with that, thank you, Mr. President. I'll yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Third VP, and really appreciate the work and dedication that all the VPs have been doing and will continue to do throughout the rest of this administration. And I really appreciate those quotes, Mike. You kind of went into MLK, very inspirational. I think there's also a quote out there that talks about from MLK, it's not about the quantity of one's work. It's about the quality, basically, that's most important. And I think that's resonates here really at the NAACP because, people can get out there and you can post on Facebook and you can send messages and you can do whatever you want to, but the quality of our product is really what's most important, and how we shape our strategy and how we engage. That's what matters at the end of the day, right? And being effective. So all our VPs have done that. I do, thanks for raising Kent earlier, recognition to our electeds that are on the call. I know we have our Commonwealth attorney. Thank you for being with us. I think I saw also Matt DeFerranti as well. The 2 guest speakers will be formally introduced here shortly. Am I missing anyone else? I know I saw Parissa and again, Matt. Am I missing anyone else from the county board? Okay, great. With that being said, we're well ahead. We're right on time with our agenda. We have our political action committee, Megan and Jamie. And this is going to be led by our PAC intern. And Jamie, hopefully y'all can say a few words and inform individuals on this call about our PAC intern and what we have going on. So the floor is yours.
Awesome. Well, good evening, everyone. I am overjoyed to introduce you to Sam Scales. Sam is in his 4th year at the University of Baltimore School of Law, where I had the pleasure of meeting him while visiting there last year. And when we think about the work of an organization like the NAACP, a huge part of our work is training a next generation of leaders. And so everyone has been through it with COVID, but our students particularly have lost vital opportunities to learn, to acquire skills, to work in their communities. And so we are overjoyed to host Sam this semester for an internship. He has a robust set of experiences in criminal justice, in labor organizing, in housing work, and really just the mission of the NAACP is coursing through his blood. And so I am overjoyed to be a part of supervising, and the entire Political Action Committee warmly welcomes Sam. And so one great part of doing an externship is the chance to acquire skills. And so we have asked Sam to do a little presentation today to promote some civic engagement and to bring us all up to speed in some political developments. So Sam, take it away.
Thank you, Professor Abrams. And it's always hard to follow those introductions, right? I mean, because you really want to hold up the bar and then you just feel like you're going to let it go. But I'm going to do the best I can. I think it was a great segue with the 3rd VP and the Martin Luther King quote, because if you can't fly, run, can't run, walk, can't walk, crawl. And when it comes to redistricting and the other word, gerrymandering, that's kind of where we are, right, in this country. We're either walking, crawling. I'm sure we're not running, but we're doing the best we can to make progress. So they were very generous with the time. I greatly appreciate that, but it may not all be needed. So I'm going to share my screen and we'll go through the slides together. So Virginia Supreme Court made a ruling in 2020 based on the census count that basically was going to redraw the line. So the question is, what is redistricting and why does it matter? Now, most of us know that it's the act and process of dividing the organizing an area for political or school districts. So there's good, bad, and ugly to that. Just like anything else we do, you have the power to do right, but then you have the thought process to possibly do wrong for various reasons, right? This is no different. So the negatives, let's go through the bad and the ugly before we get to the good, right? The negative is redistricting, which is gerrymandering in most areas, or what is considered gerrymandering, is intensely political and racial. They have what's called pack or crack. I don't know if anyone's heard of that or what the term means. You're either gonna pack them all in or you're gonna crack them down the middle. So why would we pack them? We're gonna pack them because we have these suburban areas and we have these outlier areas where they're pouring over. The glass is full, it's pouring over, and then now they're not as certain as they were to be a certain political party. So we want to redraw the lines to pack them so we have a chance of getting those seats. Or we want to crack them. We want to crack them because we want to dilute the vote. Now, the cracking typically happens in urban areas, which is for people of color. I mean, brown and black, of course, the more urbanized the area, the more it's going to lean one way. So what they typically do is they're going to crack it down the middle to give other political parties a fair chance. It was without the general public's input, mostly. Typically, when this happens because the politicians in the area felt like it was needed. Not because they asked their constituents, but because it better suited them and their political party. Now then there's the positive. If it's done properly and equitably, it actually does help because it gives an appropriate representation of the people in the area, what they need, what they want, what they desire. They can be represented in a manner that's conducive to them. Now, Arlington, I'm gonna give you kudos, you're up by 12%. Arlington is very small. I didn't think you could increase your population that much, but you're up by 12%. So this actually works for you if it's done in the proper way, right? So we're gonna talk about the background for Virginia's improvement for redistricting. So February 2019, the General Assembly passed SJ 306. It was the first reading of the constitutional amendment that would create the Redistricting Commission. So the amendments that were introduced, SJ 18, were thought to improve enabling legislation. This is what they thought would do it. They were going to determine how the commission members were chosen, the criteria for redrawing the districts, and they wanted transparency. Now that to me is very important. And I don't know if anyone knows, but typically in most states, when they start drawing these lines, they're not telling you how they're drawing it, why they choose to draw it, who's involved in drawing it. They're just doing what they want to do. And then by the time you find out, it's election day, right? Because you went to the wrong spot. Line been redrawn, and you're standing there like, I've been voting here 20 years. They knew that. They knew you wouldn't. End of the day, right? So then they used a special master requirement. Now, that is something that, especially in today's society, is very important because everything's so partisan. So to have representation on both sides of the aisle actually be a fail-safe, I think Virginia is showing progression with that. They're not flying, but nobody's flying. But they're trying to walk fast. They're trying to do that speed walk in between walk and run. So this is what the Supreme Court ordered. They said that the final maps will establish voting districts in Virginia House Delegate, Senate of Virginia, and Virginia representatives to the U.S. House of Representatives. They said that the State Board of Elections and Virginia Department of Elections will immediately start using these districts established by the final map. Now, this is why it matters. We've already gone through that. I kind of went ahead of myself. There are changes to your local map, and it's going to affect you as a voter. So I wanted to highlight your maps. There were 3. Now, if you go to the My Redistricting, you're going to see where you fall in. Just put in your address. And I recommend anyone and everyone actually doing this before your next election or any election that you have to participate in, because this has opened your area up a lot. I looked at your beginning maps and your end maps, and it's drastically different. There's a noticeable change and where you all lie in the lines of the drawing. So I'm gonna stop sharing my screen. Hopefully you all don't have a lot of questions. I was hoping it'd be straightforward. If you do, I'm gonna pray that I can answer them. There's no guarantees on that. But as someone who just moved to Virginia, I am very proud at their progression. And thank you for your time.
Okay, well, thank you, Sam. That was an outstanding presentation. Any additional remarks or questions from our members? You can feel free to come off the mic, unmute yourself and ask the question. Jamie or Megan? Oh, Sherrice has raised her hand. Okay, Sherrice.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, Simone and I have also been working, in addition to this work that Sam has taken on, Simone and I are working with Sam and having some handouts set up for our meeting on Wednesday, which we'll talk about later. So I just wanted to say, Sam is doing amazing work on our behalf, and we are so grateful for it. And I just wanted to be able to say thank you as close to in person as we can get right now. I appreciate it.
Thank you. I've enjoyed working with you as well.
Yes. All right. Well, we're a bit ahead of schedule, and that's good. We're right on time. At this time, we got some. Let's give Sam a virtual hand clap, everybody. We appreciate what you did. Thank you, Sam. All right. Now, at this time, I am going to. We get this together here, Madam Secretary. Our first guest speaker. I know she's on a time crunch. We have her for I think 20 minutes tonight, the Honorable Barbara Kanninen, who is currently serving as chair of the Arlington County School Board, Public School Board. Barbara, welcome.
Good evening, JD. How are you doing? Can we still say Happy New Year?
Yeah, you can say, yeah, good evening, NAACP. Hey.
Good evening, NAACP, which
So,
I'm a member of.
I thank you very much. So we're going to squeeze this limit, all right, in 20 minutes. And I know we had asked you to come on board and talk briefly about some of the priorities that you're looking at, and along with your team over the next year. I know you have a few more months in the seat, but could you talk briefly to our membership tonight about that? And then we're going to pivot quickly because we did get a number of questions in that I have here. That was, people had the option to put questions in on in registration. So I'm gonna get around to asking some of those, and we'll do the best we can. But the floor is now yours. Maybe 4 or 5 minutes. You can talk about that. Then we're gonna go right into some questions. And I know we could spend an hour with you, and all the questions won't get answered at the end of the day. That's the reality. But we're gonna see what we can get. So the floor is yours, Barbara.
Well, thank you again. Good evening, everyone. It's wonderful to see you, even though we're all in little boxes. It's always a pleasure to join you all. In thinking about coming this evening, I was reminded that, the NAACP truly has been one of the greatest champions for education this country has ever known. Universal, equitable education, a forever champion. And that's really terrific. Education is a core tenet of what we need to support and sustain our democracy. And I know I heard some of your fighting words through the introduction this evening. And, as we talk about sustaining our democracy, supporting education is fundamental to that. And I'm so glad that we're a team together in championing that. So I want to try, I think you said maybe 5 minutes. I'm going to try to hit 3 things. I want to talk about our students, a little bit about some of the things happening at the state level, and then also, of course, Arlington Public Schools. So let me start right off with our students. We have 27,000 amazing human beings. They are bright, have amazing futures, and they are growing up at a defining moment in our history, one that none of us ever would have imagined not long ago. We talk about the twin pandemics, COVID and our national reckoning with race. And our children are experiencing so much, they're feeling so much. They are struggling in different ways. It could be academic, it could be social emotional, it could be mental. There are students experiencing true trauma more than ever. Our job right now as a school board, but also as a community and with our community partners, and up at the state level and beyond, our job is to make sure that these children all grow up carrying forward the strengths of what they're going to get out of this very difficult time, but not being damaged by what has happened in these last 2 years. And that's something we take very seriously in Arlington Public Schools, but also something that I try to remind everyone, and Katie Cristol can verify that I talk to her every time I talk to her about our students. We need to have these students in mind all the time. And their recovery is not a short process. It's not simple to sort of open their brains and toss in the 3 months or however much time and content they may need and may have missed through that time of virtual learning. They're human beings. Human beings develop in complex ways. We are going to need to follow them and pay attention to them and support them and provide for them in every way we can. I truly believe we won't understand what's happened to this generation really for 10 years as scientists are able then to really look at data and understand, baseline and how things have played out. But that means we need to continue to pay attention to them and do everything we can. We have a ton of supports in Arlington Public Schools. Thanks very much to our Arlington taxpayers. We are a well-resourced school system with a variety of supports, not just our high-quality teachers, of course, but counselors, mental health professionals, social workers, equity and excellence coordinators, bilingual family liaisons, so many adults and professionals in our buildings that are there to support our students and make sure they get what they need. We will continue doing that. And again, really, really hope that we can all take that on and remember to keep doing this, not just now as we're talking about schools, but for the future. So again, thank you all for your partnership with that. Speaking of supporting our students, you may have seen the breaking news today about Arlington Public Schools, our school board, joining in a lawsuit. It was called a declaratory judgment. This morning, it was filed in Arlington Circuit Court. And I can't actually provide any more detail than what has been provided in the media because it's a legal suit. I have to sort of, not make any additional comments that could be misconstrued. But you may have seen that we're one of 7 school boards that have stated that we are going to protect our students and staff and community by continuing with a mask mandate, even as the governor issued an executive order for something different. And that's going to be playing out in the courts. If the chat room is open, I would invite anyone to maybe provide a link to the Arl Now article, or it's been published in a number of places for you all to read about that. Unfortunately, I can't comment more about that case right now as I'm here with you this evening. Another thing that I'm not going to be able to provide a lot of information about, but I know is heavily on your minds, was the governor's executive order 1, which is about critical race theory and so-called divisive concepts. What I can tell you right now is that our Chief Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer, Jason Otley, is working to look at that and understand what it's about. He's going to make sure that we all get accurate information. He's going to be engaging with the community on this. We are continuing working as we always have. We trust our professional educators. They are teaching to the state standards right now. They are expected to teach a culturally balanced and inclusive curriculum, and we expect to continue that. This conversation will play out over time. And again, JD told me I had to keep it short anyway. So this is the kind of thing that maybe as things develop over time, we can talk about a lot more another time. So let me very quickly tell you a couple other things about the state. There is a lot to worry about, but the one thing that is good right now was the budget that Governor Northam left with our General Assembly. It actually is pretty good for Arlington. The state, let's be clear, underfunds schools all across the Commonwealth. We talk about what we could be doing in Arlington Public Schools to do more for our students. And the same student who grows up in Chesterfield, Virginia, would get half the resources that students in Arlington Public Schools get. Our schools are vastly underfunded in the Commonwealth, and that is something that we really need to continue to fight for, over the long haul. But as we look at the budget this year, I can say that it's actually better for Arlington than previous budgets have been. And my main advocacy with our legislators is to make sure that that budget remains intact. You may know that the governor issued a couple of proposed amendments, I think just today or yesterday, one of which is to fund charter schools. Please know that by state law, charter schools do have to be approved by local school boards. So unless something vastly changes, we do have control over how that might play out in terms of whether charter schools are part of Arlington Public Schools. I do not support them personally, and believe that they divert funds away from the public education system that we need to remain strong. Another thing that he put forward is an issue that I know you all are tracking carefully. He put a grant fund actually in as an amendment to support school resource officers. All I can tell you there is I assume that Arlington Public Schools will not be looking to be applying for those particular grants, but it looks like for now that's the way that he has proposed. The idea that I think he put in some of his rhetoric about having SROs in all of the schools or all school divisions. I'm of course happy to answer any questions about any of this when we get to that point. Last thing from the state I want to tell you about, because I think this is another one that some of you all have worked on, and that is the issue that we faced with our high schools and interscholastic activities when we have racial violence, verbal abuse across school systems. Individual school systems don't have the power to address them when we're talking about students in other school systems. And we had that incident a year ago with the Wakefield football game. And many things have happened since then, but one of them is that Senator Eben and Delegate Lopez have brought a bill forward. And I'm told it has now made it out of subcommittee on a unanimous vote, which is pretty good. And that is a bill, I think the subtitle is Prevention of Hate Speech at Interscholastic Athletic Competitions. So that bill is moving forward. I believe some parents went down and advocated, as well as my colleague Monique O'Grady, and we're going to continue tracking that as well. So just a couple of quick comments about Arlington. This year it's been a great school year. all our students, as you know, are back in person 5 days a week. Things have been going quite well. Because we've been virtual, it's a little hard to get to know our leadership in the way that we do, in normal times. And just want to share with you that the superintendent and his cabinet, his senior leaders that he works with, his team, are really terrific, incredible instructional leaders. They're equity focused and are really bringing some strong operational upgrades to our system. So, we're going to be running better, running more smoothly, and focused on what matters most, again, which is that equitable education for all of our students. We're headed into budget season, and our priority right now is ensuring that our staff get those market competitive salaries that they deserve, and that will allow us to ensure that we are recruiting and retaining the very best. The people in our buildings are exactly what our students need to thrive. Having high quality professionals is it's what school is all about. So compensation is a big part of what we will be talking about as we go into the budget season. We will be talking about collective bargaining and getting ready to institute that. You may have heard that we just passed our closeout action and are funding some new literacy and math resources to support our students.
Yeah.
And then finally, one more thing, JD, real quick.
You don't want to hear from me. That's what it is. But go ahead.
Okay, no. This is important because as we get into the spring, we're going to be doing our capital improvement plan. The first time in 4 years because of the pandemic. We're going to get back to our 10-year plan. We're going to be building out our plans for the Career Center, which I'm very excited about. But also, we have finally caught up with our growth. If you've heard me speak over my time on the board, you know that rapid enrollment growth has been a huge pressure for us. We've been trying to build fast enough. We finally did catch up. And we're going to be able to start talking about renovating our oldest schools and doing some improvements on some of our older buildings. And that's extremely important. So sorry, JD, I may have gone over a little bit more than you wanted me to, but thank you all again. I look forward to your questions, and thank you all for being great partners and champions for Arlington Public Schools.
Well, thank you for those remarks and updates. We really appreciate it. We received a total of 7 questions, right? In our Zoom platform. We're not going to be able to go through all 7. Some of these questions you've kind of touched on already. Critical race theory, what's going on with the executive order from the governor. But I do want to kind of just bring this to light. COVID, school systems, ventilation. This is part of a question, filtration. What is the board looking at right now and working with the superintendent and his team as far as getting proper ventilation in our school systems? Because we don't know where masking is going to end up, but we know our ventilation systems aren't perhaps where they need to be. Can you talk a little bit about that? Just briefly?
Sure. I mean, I think a quick way to explain it might be that there are 3 buckets, right? The things we've already done, the things that we could immediately get in. Obviously, ventilation and air quality became, a huge priority for us the minute we understood that that's, how we can control the virus spread. So, we have a terrific staff who have massive spreadsheets of all of our systems throughout our schools. I think we have 40 buildings altogether when you include all of our programs and other things. So there were a number of things that were done right up front or over time, that we have been able to do. And I guess I would say going forward, there are two buckets going forward. There are the immediate upgrades that we are going to be doing next that are on the list. That are basically funded. We put a lot of money every year into our infrastructure upgrades.
Right.
So there are some things that are already on the list, and then there are things that are down the road a little bit more. And I mean, the only good news that I can share there is, our county revenues are also looking healthier than we originally anticipated. I don't want to get ahead of Chair Cristol and say that everything's fantastic, but it does look like we will have, our revenue stream will be better than we were planning for. And that then means that those longer term, the upgrades that we might not have been able to get to, we might be able to pull some of them forward as well. So it's absolutely a priority. I think we included it in our CIP direction to the superintendent, and we will be doing as much as we can.
Yeah, sticking with COVID and the second and third order effects behind this nasty pandemic, we've learned a lot, and I know our education committee has worked with your team on the virtual learning program, right? But we also know and suspect, right, because it's been noted that we understand many of our minority students have fallen short and in the short term, and we're looking for the long term, right? So what are we doing to ensure that these students aren't left behind, or how are you monitoring that at the board level? And for those children that probably just don't make it, right? What are we going to do to ensure they receive the same level of education? Because, you know, maybe it's the digital divide or something along those lines that kept these kids from learning at the same pace. Some kids need face-to-face interaction. Let's be honest about that. Then you have those children with disabilities, right? Who, you know, virtual learning program just not going to cut the mustard. So how are we monitoring that, and how do we look to ensure, again, none of those students are left behind?
So I think the main thing, and I think this is what's frustrating to community members who really want to dig in and see how those students are being supported. The fact is, if you ever do get a chance to be in our schools, you'll see it every day. One of the things I've promoted on my Twitter account is this video that we looked at in December that really did that. Our TV team went into Carlin Springs, for example, and showed those teachers, and we have specialists, you know, we have so many beyond our classroom teacher, we have special ed assistants and reading specialists and all sorts of interventionists who really can get in and do different types of small group work, individual work if needed. You know, there are a variety of ways that students are worked with. And then the question you asked is, how do we know? How are we keeping track? How are we ensuring? And again, that is done on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis with, you know, in the schools. We don't see that real-time data, but that's how our teachers work. They assess students, they understand where they are, and they make sure that they're getting those supports. Is it perfect? Do they all have exactly what they need and are all caught up today? Probably not, because again, these are human beings with developmental needs, and we're trying to, you know, address those one day at a time, but it will take time.
Yeah.
We'll have summer school.
So totally appreciate that. I know we need to address it, but with all the good revenue we say that's going to be coming in, right? We're going to be good there, and everything else, you know, pay for teachers. We need the most important thing, right? In my eyes, is to ensure that some of our most vulnerable populations and students, because of this pandemic and the issues with virtual learning, don't get left behind. So I appreciate you talking about that. And I will ask this question because it was it's in the chat and it's here, and we have 2 minutes left in your time. I know. Thank you for attending, Mary, the other board member, and welcome to the board. Thank you for being with us tonight. There's a question about what are your thoughts? I know you're ending up on the chair. You made an announcement that you're not going to seek re-election, but what are your thoughts on the school board caucus process?
What are my thoughts on the school board caucus process? The Democratic caucus. I'm a fan. What's that? Yes, the way it works, as we know, is that school board is a nonpartisan race on the ballot, but anyone can endorse, including the NAACP. And the Democratic endorsement process is a way that
NAACP doesn't endorse political candidates.
Okay. That's fair. But yes, you know, I'm personally a Democrat. I carry those values, and I know if I were a voter, I would want to be informed by you know, my party as to who their favorite candidate is. And I have participated. I have both won and lost the Democratic caucus myself. It's a rigorous process. Voters expect a lot of interaction. They have a lot of tough questions, and you know, it's a fair process that allows for extensive vetting of candidates. At least I will say I participated when we were not virtual, so I don't have the experience of running in a virtual environment, but I'm a fan.
Yeah, so you would say, just the last question, you believe that the current process, the way it's structured, is fair?
I believe it's a good process that informs Democratic voters for the information they need. I know that there are some recommendations. I have not studied them carefully, so I wouldn't want to presuppose what is or isn't more fair or a better approach.
All right, and we have a minute and a half left, and I saw a few hands, I think, raised. I see Sarah and who else? Let me go first to our, see if anyone, Sharia Simone from my education committee, do you have any questions? If not, I see Sarah has her hand raised, Sharia Simone, and we have now a minute left, so it may be real quick.
Yeah. This is Sherrice, and I did have a question I posed in the form initially about critical race theory, and I really did want to hear more about that than what Barbara said, but I am okay with having a separate meeting. We can have Barbara and come to the education committee and talk more about that. So we would look forward to having some time to have that in more depth.
Thank you very much, and we will extend the invitation to you, Madam Chair, to come to our education committee. One last question, Susan, Sarah Munson, go ahead. Come off mute. Sarah?
Actually, my question was about critical race theory too. I think that's been covered.
Okay, Deborah Deborah?
Oh, yes, thank you so much. So my question may be a little different, and I hope it doesn't bring the group down too much, but my daughter, so we're Haitian, but Black. And while she was in school, it was just very mentally and emotionally challenging for her. And since we've been at home, she has flourished. And so we had a lot of conversations about it. And some of it was just some of the, I don't know how to say it, but just bullying and treatment she would get. One of the examples she would give is she'd be in class and everyone would be talking and she would be singled out, and it happened a lot, and she would be the only Black student, and so it carried with her, and it was just very heavy. And so since we've been at home, obviously a lot of that weight got lifted off and she was able to focus more on learning. And I just wonder, you probably can't answer the question now, but I hope that there's something that can be done about that as students go back into the learning environment, that maybe this is a good time to start asking those questions, like, why are these things happening and what can we do as a community to improve our students of color, Black students experience in the classroom that are suffering from this? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Pierre. Deborah, you want 30 seconds on that? Or if not, I think when you come back to the education committee, Ms. Pierre, work with our education committee. We can go do deep dives into those issues, hopefully with the chair, and talk specifically about what you brought up, which is bullying, which, personally, I have a zero tolerance for it, but we know it goes on and it occurs in all school systems, but we need to, there's a level of accountability that needs to take place, not only with the students, so they'll learn from their mistakes, but also with faculty, and even conversations need to take place with families to let people know we're not going to condone certain behaviors in this public school system. So we're there with you. Thank you, Barbara, for being with us tonight. I know you have another engagement. Appreciate everything, and we look forward to seeing you soon, okay? Let's give her a round of applause, everyone. Virtual clap.
Thank you.
All right. All right. We're only a few minutes behind, 3 minutes, and I don't think the next individual, see if Madam Secretary, we can find Ms. Cristol. Is she with us? Yes.
I'm right here. I don't know if speaking helps prompt my bubble to show up, but I'm here.
Yeah.
Good
All right.
evening.
So without any further ado, I will introduce to you the chair of the Arlington County Board, who is on her second term, the Honorable Katie Cristol. She, of course, like I just mentioned, is the chair for this year. We had asked, like we do every year, the chairs to come in and provide a little bit about the priorities, things they're planning on looking at and doing as a team on behalf of our citizenry this year. So Katie, we're going to ask you to talk a little bit about 5 minutes or so about that. I know you won't be able to cover it all. I saw you in a meeting. I know just recently with the chamber, you can go an hour, and we won't get it all in 5 minutes, but we hope you can give us what you can in 5 minutes, and we're going to go pivot right to some questions, because we did get a lot of questions as well for you, which I know all of those questions will not be answered tonight. So the floor is now yours, Katie.
Thank you so much, Mr. President. And it's really nice to see you all. If we haven't met before, as JD mentioned, I'm Katie Cristol. I'm now in my second round chairing the board, last year in 2018. And I'm looking forward to the year ahead. Before I barrel into priorities, I just want to pause because it has been such an eventful past 12 months, and 12 months in which this organization has had a really significant impact. Certainly representation, for example, on the police practices group, leading to the creation of our community oversight board, which I'll speak to in greater depth shortly, but also on things like alternatives to policing, which we have been steadily implementing through budget change, ordinance change, policy change. For example, funding a mobile crisis unit for emergency mental health response. And then just this Saturday, adopting an ordinance that allows for automatic speed enforcement, which pursues both our Vision Zero goal of zero traffic fatalities and the PPG recommendation of reducing resident interaction with police. Certainly one of the most physical manifestations of the strength of this branch of the NAACP has been your advocacy and your efficacy on removing symbols of Arlington's legacies of racism. At the urging of the NAACP, we jettisoned the old logo evoking Arlington House, the home of Robert E. Lee, and the location, site of enslavement. And on Saturday, we unveiled a brand new flag with the new logo of Arlington County, thanks to the logo committee, including NAACP President Spain, who is part of that committee as well. We worked together with a renaming committee of the then Lee Highway Alliance, now the Langston Boulevard Alliance. They also included NAACP leaders. I had the privilege of being the board liaison to that group to identify John Mercer Langston as an inspirational leader to honor in lieu of Robert E. Lee. And just earlier this month, actually, the Commonwealth Transportation Board acted to change the name of Old Lee Highway, which officially was the final step in removing the name of Robert E. Lee from this major thoroughfare. So big impact in 2021. I know that's going to continue in the year ahead. And just a couple of the things that we are most aggressively working on. The first, of course, is trying to finish this crawl out of the pandemic. You know, in 2021, you all helped us as key leaders on the Complete Vaccination Committee, which has been so essential. You all have probably seen the statistic, 3/4 of Arlingtonians 5 and older are fully vaccinated. That's 10% higher than the national average. And that means, of course, that we still have work to do, especially with our students under 18. So we're holding vaccination clinics at Hoffman Boston, the Montessori School, Kenmore, and Gunston. But I also just want to highlight one other statistic, because in this age of vaccination skepticism, I think it's amazing. And I think it speaks to the work of organizations like the NAACP and others being trusted messengers on vaccination. 95.1%, at least as of a week ago, of adults in Arlington had received at least one vaccination. Again, we still have work to do to get them fully vaccinated, but in the face of so much misinformation and skepticism, that means that the work of the Complete Vaccination Committee, the NAACP, and others in helping address misinformation and persuade neighbors and loved ones with access that is relevant to you all and relevant to them has just been so efficacious and critical. So a few other priorities in the year ahead. Housing is our priority every year, and that is especially going to be the case in 2022. As you all probably saw, just as we closed out 2021, we approved funding to participate or to support the acquisition of the Barcroft Apartments by a mission-driven partner. With this loan, we're going to help keep over 1,300 units affordable for 99 years for our neighbors who are at 60% of the area median income or below. It is a generational opportunity to increase the county's housing affordable to stock at a time of need. If you're interested in learning more about that, I can share a website as we start to put together the teams, including residents of the Barcroft Apartments and residents from throughout the county, to start to envision the future while protecting the stability and affordability of those homes. We have also been working when we talk about lessons learned, from example, from the issues at the Serrano with lack of housing quality. We are trying to codify those lessons into programs and policies that will address the fact that a lot of Arlington's committed affordable housing stock is aging. And so that requires new approaches to keep those apartments in good repair and help tenants, renters get their housing problems addressed. So we have steps underway, like more inspections, comprehensive capital needs assessments. We are very focused on holding landlords accountable using new terms that we've already adopted in our Affordable Housing Investment Fund loans. And we're working to improve support and outreach for tenants in partnership with tenant advocates. And so we look forward to continued conversations with the Housing Committee of the NAACP in that regard as well. Many of you might remember the last time I was chair in 2018, we really focused on expanding childcare in Arlington County and addressing what was then a critical shortage. I'm really excited to share that as a result of the multi-sector broad team and all the community engagement of the childcare initiative then and all the policies that we adopted, the number of licensed spots has actually increased by 40% in Arlington County since 2018. This is huge, but it doesn't go far enough because that is not meeting the needs of our low-income families especially. And we know that for low-income families, especially after the pandemic, trying to get back on their feet, childcare is essential. So that is our focus for 2021, in particular, trying to expand the number of programs that participate in the state subsidy, the subsidy program that would allow lower income families to enroll in their centers with some support, as well as trying to figure out and address more of the barriers to qualified families from participating in that program. We think there may be opportunities for us to plus up the subsidy at a local level, otherwise help with paperwork and knock down barriers so that more low income kids and families can get into those high quality environments. A final point, and I'll end on this note. I suspect it may be one in which there's more interest here. With a heavy lift and quite a bit of advocacy from the NAACP, we passed an ordinance to establish a community oversight board. So we are now in the process of building out that community oversight board. I think despite some differences of opinion from different segments or stakeholders along the way, I think the one thing we all agreed on was that it was incredibly important to have the right people in that role. And so we are taking that recruitment and appointment really seriously. We had over 100 applicants last fall, which speaks to the willingness of this community to do the hard work. And since December, our team has been working to remove the objectively disqualified applicants. So if you're a relative of a current law enforcement officer or some of the other things we put in the ordinance that prohibited somebody from participating, and narrow down that list. And we are now in the process of assembling a panel. I'm thrilled to share that Rodney Turner, who chaired the Community Oversight Committee of the Police Practices Group, has agreed to chair that panel. We're recruiting other panelists to come from the PBG to further narrow down the applications. They're going to review video interviews of those candidates to give a more complete picture of who they are and what they could offer. And then finally, the county board members will review and interview final candidates. We expect to make appointments around February, we expect to finalize around February, and we hope to make appointments at our March meeting. So I'm going to pause there. I really appreciate your partnership. I'm sure we've got some good questions coming through in the chat. Mr. President Spain, back to you.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair, for being with us tonight. And I know there's a laundry list, I would say, of other issues that you were not able to provide a deep dive on. I heard some of this last week, but we receive, again, a lot of questions, and I'm going to do my best to see if we can talk about something that I just want to, take a point of privilege, presidential privilege, and bring up is I'm concerned about the relationship between the county board and the Green Valley Civic Association. What I have noticed and seen, and this is just media reports and then a few conversations, is like there's issues that are going on that may surface in Green Valley, right? And things and policies or decisions made at the county level, whether that's staff or whoever, and there hasn't been any effective communication going on, and it causes leadership in the valley to have to raise the red flag. What can we do to improve that communication so we aren't in the public space showing that discourse? Because that is a bit concerning, given the rich and historic nature of Green Valley, where a lot of our African Americans live at these days.
Absolutely. That's a great question. It's one I think about a lot. I live in Douglas Park, just north of the valley. And when it's not sub-zero, walk my kid to school every day in the valley. He goes to Funshine for preschool. And so know the neighbors. It's always a good chance to chat with folks and talk about bus stop issues and things like that. And I do think a lot about how, the sort of lived experience that many of us have forming relationships across the community often don't seem to be reflected when it comes to the letters that we are receiving from the Civic Association. And I know that certain members of the leadership of the Civic Association feel when engaged on different projects. I think part of this is too simplistic an answer, because there are many answers to this, but part of it, I think, is broadening the engagement that we have as the county board and as county staff throughout the neighborhood. I think in general, we put a lot of reliance in as county government on civic associations. And that is both a lot of responsibility for volunteer individuals leading those organizations, and it also doesn't always represent the full view of the neighborhood. And so I think it's really incumbent on county government to be more committed to hearing from as many voices as possible. We've made some literal investments in equitable engagement. For example, we're trying to look for ways to more effectively compensate people for their time, because that's another reason in which it can be hard to hear from voices when people have obstacles to participation like shift work, childcare, et cetera. So I think broadening the engagement, hearing more voices is really important.
Yeah. I wanted to, I do have some questions about that statement and what you're saying. But I don't want to prolong. I am a bit, you mentioned hearing from more voices, right? And I don't know how to take that. I understand community involvement, but when you have the Green Valley Association, for example, right, who has duly elected leaderships, and the Civic Association play an instrumental part in shaping the future and speaking on behalf of the community. I think we can cherry pick around Arlington, and I will tell you that there's many associations, right, that they speak and it's like things happen, right? And so that's just a perception. I guess we could find ways to, and if there's any way we at NAACP can help, but I just read those stories and talked to a few people and just I'm a bit concerned. Let's talk a bit about county government. There's a question that came to us, and I'm just going to read this because the person who put it in deserves that. The news is replete with stories of election workers being harassed by QAnon, and they certainly can relate to this, since the same thing has happened to this individual on 2 instances, right? At the end of the day, they want to know, how does the board plan to address the influence of QAnon affiliated employees on the delivery of county services?
That is a really excellent question. And first, let me just say, I'm so sorry for whomever may be speaking that they've had that experience, and I'd love to know more about it. Can you repeat for me that they're saying they're employees who are influenced by QAnon, or there are QAnon conspiracy that's influencing employees?
Employees who are QAnon followers, right, who are in county government, and how does the board plan to address the influence of these employees? Because a lot of them tout who they are, not only in the workspace, but also while they deliver county products and services on the county. How do we get in front of that? What mechanisms do we have in place to, for those individuals?
That's a great question. Again, I'd love to hear more, not because I want to make anybody uncomfortable, but I'd love to know more about the departments, for example, perhaps speaking broadly. Let me say specifically in terms of human resources policies. I'm saying this only as framing because then I want to talk about policy, because I do think this is the county board's responsibility. When it comes to human resources, hiring, firing, performance plans, that type of thing, our system of government insulates county employees from county board influence in that regard. I think it has, generally speaking, a lot of benefits. It prevents there from being, patronage systems, for example, and political favors. But I know it is sometimes frustrating when folks want to know, for example, why has an ex-employee been formally reprimanded? And the county board, your elected officials, can't speak to that. But let me talk about what I do think the county board should and can have influence over, which is the prioritization of equity in internal affairs in county government. And so one of the things that folks have seen, we adopted actually under my colleague Christian Dorsey's leadership in 2019, a formal equity resolution. And one of the ways in which that has been operationalized, and I can talk for hours about how it's been operationalized in more public facing ways, but maybe that others have not seen as much internal to county government, has been demanding that the leadership of every department within county government designate leaders within that department who are going to be responsible for equity training and implementation of reforms, as well as measuring the success of those reforms in government. And you've started to see some of that come out, for example, regarding the board during our budget cycles, which is our opportunity to visit with each department on a department by department basis. So I think that is one of the important ways that county government or the county board can exert our expectations over county staff, even if we're not involved in the actual individual HR cases by employees. The other thing I will say, we know that QAnon conspiracy theorists and anti-vaxxers are kissing cousins. On February 1st, our mandate that every county employee be vaccinated goes into effect. Members of county staff who are not vaccinated will be put on leave, and if they are not vaccinated by the end of February, they will have terminated their employment with Arlington County. So that may be a way of weeding out some of the problematic individuals that has been discussed.
Yeah, well, great. Thank you for that input. And I'm going to try to roll at least two of these three questions into one. There's some great comments if you get a chance and questions in the chat box. One from Jamie Abrams and interesting one, a comment by David Chick. So environment, right? Someone asked the question, how do you view climate and climate change and environment issues here in Arlington? Then there was also questions about what are we going to do to protect tree canopy and in some of our neighborhoods, more especially our minority neighborhoods. Can you talk about those two? And then I want to kind of end, because everything we talk about now is really related around COVID. You know, Destination 2027, right? Was a community-based type program that we got behind in 2018. However, there are some facts here that out of all the initiatives that were put forward, we're only like on completion of step one. And so I want to know where we headed with that. I know Dr. Varghese and his team are doing some things, but how are we doing as it relates to health equity in the community? But let's go ahead and back up just a little bit about climate, and then talk about tree canopy, and then to Destination 2027, if you can.
Absolutely.
I know you can, but just in the time allotted.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. So, and I'm glad that you asked about climate change, because we know, and that you connected it to tree canopy and natural resources. So this is, of course, a racial justice issue, right? There are no race neutral policies, period. And that's especially true when it comes to the environment, and Black and Latino communities nationally have higher exposure to environmental toxins. There's also been some really interesting work that suggests places where there are nature deserts or tree deserts are more likely to be in communities and neighborhoods of color. So one of the things that's underway on that kind of trees and natural resources side is an update to our urban forestry and natural resources management plan, which is an element of our comprehensive plan. There was a ton of community engagement around that. I can share some links and commend that to everyone's attention about what people's priorities were throughout Arlington. And we will be hearing from our staff with some recommendations for a comp plan element update in the coming months. And I think trying to figure out how we explicitly focus on communities and neighborhoods that have been less well served by those urban forestry efforts in the past is incredibly important. So I think you'll see that kind of thematically emerge in that area. On the community energy side, this has been a huge push of my colleagues and mine to reach our goals of being net zero in county operations by 2035. We're actually 80% of the way there, which is exciting. And then net zero as an entire community by 2040. We have an implementation plan of our community energy plan that touches on everything from opportunities to make the county fleet electric to higher building standards, for example. So we have a lot of strategies underway there. Again, we know that climate action has to be seen through the lens of racial equity, and also making sure that opportunities for green jobs that come to Arlington primarily target our communities who have historically not benefited from those types of new economy green jobs. The other question you asked was about
Destination 2027 health.
Yeah, so I am a little surprised to hear that that's not been implemented, because that has been actually a profoundly guiding document for us. That is in fact what led to the equity resolution, which then led to some of the work that I was talking about. I would love to go back and visit with that, maybe figure out if there are a couple of priorities.
I would love to be, and I think our branch and maybe some members there would like to help with that, because from what I'm hearing is that we are falling short in Destination 2027 and the entire rollout of health equity, and not meeting metrics or goals that were identified again. And we're, 2027 is right around the corner. So we have some work.
I'd love to, and I just want to highlight to say, and I credit the NAACP and a lot of other advocates in the community very much for this, that Destination 2027 has informed every aspect of our COVID response in this community. I think, if you look, for example, at statistics right now about who's been vaccinated or who has had access to vaccinations in Arlington, we actually see overrepresentation, certainly of our Latino neighbors, right? For example. And so that has been a huge push and a huge area of import for us in trying to respond to COVID. So I absolutely believe that it is within the realm of possibility that if there were new public health policies that we were hoping to be able to implement, that they've been pushed by the wayside during the pandemic, because it has been an all hands on deck effort. But the guiding spirit of 2027 has been a really important one throughout the last 2 years.
Right. Well, thank you, Katie. There's just so much. I do want to. We're right at 8:20, and we have, for everyone on the call, we do have 3 important issues to talk about. We want to talk about scholarship, housing, and then close up with our education committee for a pretty large event later this week. But how do we look, Katie, to address incidents of racism in our county and in the government? And I bring that up in a really, I try to be a transparent way, because we've seen, individuals be racially profiled in our company, in our community. Yet we don't see at NAACP a level of accountability of certain individuals that have done that, right? So I'm talking about a case that happened, I think, a year or so ago, right? So how do we hold people? I mean, what do we do? What does the county do when there's allegations of racial profiling? I know of a couple of occurrences that have been brought to the attention. What do we do? Is that a legal matter? Something you can't discuss?
No.
We're really sensitive, because I think, we can't tolerate that here in Arlington.
So this is again about county employees or just incidents of racism in our community?
County employees. Yeah.
Sure. So again, I don't, my colleagues and I don't have responsibility or authority for individual cases of people being put on performance plans, formally reprimanded, et cetera. But I think it is really important for us to set policy, which is within our bailiwick, that communicates our expectations. And so, for example, we set policy by adopting our human rights ordinance, which gives people an opportunity to come forward and sets the expectations for what quote unquote counts as discrimination in our community. And people can absolutely bring complaints forward through our human rights policies and under our human rights ordinance when they've experienced discrimination. I think we can, for example, ask and demand to see, when approving the budgets of departments, how equity and how training of employees is being affected. We can ask to review internal policy and standards, for example, our police handbook. To make sure that when we say expectations for non-discrimination are communicated, that we're specifically trying to be, that we're clear about what that means. And so I think there are a lot of ways that we can try to engage, and I am sorry that I can't promise you that I will individually fire the person who's committed that allegation, committed that act of discrimination.
No, we'll move on. So, Ms. Cristol, thank you for being with us tonight. We wish you and your colleagues on the board the best of health as you take us through some very challenging times in the county, and look forward to collaborative efforts and working together in peace and in harmony in 2022. But the NAACP, we'll agitate if we need to,
That's right.
but in a good way. With that being said, there's a number of questions. We got a few things to go to. Thank you for being with us tonight.
Thanks so much for the invitation.
Are you welcome? Bye-bye. Okay, moving right along, we thank the chair of our county board for being with us tonight. We're going to pivot right over to our scholarship committee. Do we have Adora, Karen, or Jill DeWitt on the line? If so, just come off mute.
I didn't see either one of them.
Okay, I know Adora went out to, she's on travel. Madam Secretary, do you want to talk briefly about that? But you may have noticed, I think we shared, we're going to put out our scholarship applications here, hopefully within the next month. We're also have this essay writing a workshop that's going to take place, hosted by the scholarship committee. So that was sent to everyone via email, MailChimp. So stay tuned, more to follow. Our students are doing well out in universities. They're about to get their second round of stipends for the second semester. So I think all is well there. Let's move over to housing. Kellen? Macbeth?
Shitty.
Yeah.
So the housing committee has been busy this month. I think everyone on our membership list got an invitation to attend the Fair Housing Conference that will be taking place on February 16th from 6 to 8 p.m. We're super excited about that event. We're going to be talking about a lot of data that we have in Arlington that looks at neighborhood segregation in our housing market. We're going to look at educational, like school segregation. One of our education committee members is going to be presenting on that, which I think will be very enlightening. We're also going to look at opportunity gaps across our community when it comes to racial and ethnic groups, as well as efforts that the Regional Council of Governments are working on currently to try to address some of these issues, and some of the activities that the NAACP has been engaged in to try to make progress in this area as well. In addition to that, we should be sending out a letter to the county board and county manager this week with a series of fair housing recommendations. So we've been working for the last year on a lot of those. And so this is sort of the formalized set of recommendations that we think can really make a good amount of progress in advancing housing equity throughout our community. We are also continuing to work with the tenant leaders and other advocates for the Serrano to ensure that we're making progress there. I think the membership saw the letter we received from the Virginia Office of Attorney General, who had opened an investigation into alleged housing discrimination at the Serrano property. So we're cooperating with that investigation to the extent possible. And we are also continuing to look into a number of really critical issues this year, like zoning reform and the missing middle, which I think is being renamed housing choice something. But whatever the name of it is, we should hopefully be working on some recommendations to the county board and county staff on how to make sure that we are looking at equity and fair housing when the county makes decisions related to changing our zoning laws and how we look at density within the community. So those are the main things that we're looking at. Oh, I should also mention we've been actively involved advocating before the General Assembly. So last week we had a meeting with some legislators to talk about a number of different housing bills and tenants protection of rights legislation. We've been coordinating with the Virginia Poverty Law Center, the Virginia State Conference for the NAACP, as well as a lot of other advocate groups and tenants to try to advance as much as we can legislation before the General Assembly this year in support of more equitable housing, more affordable housing, and more tenant protections and rights. So I think those are the main things that we're working on, but super excited about what we can accomplish this year. I think we have a great committee. If anyone is interested in joining our committee, please reach out to the secretary or myself, and we're happy to have you join us on that committee. Thank you.
Thanks, Kellen. Hold on just a second. Kellen, do you want to give any updates on the legislation that we work with Senator Eben and a few others and the current status down at the General Assembly as it relates to tenants?
Sure. So a key piece of legislation that we had worked on this summer, and then once once there was a change in power in November, we worked with the Virginia Poverty Law Center to make some changes to it to hopefully make it more palatable to Republicans. And that is allowing local governments to sue on behalf of tenants to enforce their rights under the Virginia Residential Landlord Tenant Act. So we think this would be super impactful legislation if it were to pass, because it would remove some of the barriers that tenants, especially low-income tenants, currently face to enforcing the rights in courts against bad actor landlords. We're working, actually Senator Frivola introduced that legislation. I think it's Senate Bill 43. It has not come up yet in committee for consideration, but as soon as that does, we'll definitely let everyone know who's interested so that hopefully we can get a lot of people who are able to testify or at least send some emails or letters to legislators to let them know to please support that. I believe there's a companion bill in the House as well. So we'll provide more information about that. Senator Evan has also introduced legislation around basically allowing during eviction proceedings tenants to bring up landlord lapses as sort of a defense in the judgment. So currently, you can have a tenant who hasn't had running water for 3 months because their landlord hasn't fixed a broken water pipe. And if they stop paying rent, the landlord can evict them, and they can't use as a defense. Well, the landlord hasn't provided me with heat or running water for months. Why am I still expected to pay the full amount of rent? So this legislation that's been introduced in both the House and the Senate would allow a judge to just consider these mitigating factors. So, potentially it could reduce the judgment, or it could, just have some sort of impact. And currently judges have even said, we'd love to be able to consider this evidence, but under current law, we can't. So that, along with a number of pieces of legislation that Delegate Lopez has introduced around adding mold and mice standards to the Virginia code enforcement, so that those issues and lapses on the part of landlords can actually be enforced by code enforcement rather than having to sue through the Landlord Tenant Act. And there's a number of other really good provisions around eviction prevention that are before the General Assembly. So we're trying to work with as many advocates as we can to try to make progress this year.
Thanks, Kelly. Really appreciate it. Thank you so much for a thorough report. Last but definitely not least, because this is very important, because we have 87 right now. So if you haven't registered, you need to register. We're gonna have an education committee come up and talk about a few things they're doing. Exec committee voted on an issue yesterday. Maybe we'll get around to that, or maybe next month, but there's a big event this week coming up. Sherrice and Simone.
Yep.
Chair and Vice Chair. Okay.
I am here, and Simone can keep me honest if I miss any details. Just to kind of give you guys a highlight on what we've been doing in the Ed Committee of late. We met and started to talk about some different ways that we want to try to engage and activate this year. Since we've got this new administration coming in, and we've got a lot of focus on a lot of the legislative rollbacks that are going on, we want to be able to have a more active role in terms of our communications with the school board, and make sure that we are illuminating and articulating the NAACP values and our positions on some of these key issues as they come up. So we are working to build the capacity of our Ed Committee members so that we can have, a great cadre of people that we can have, be ambassadors of what's important to us, and really highlight and get that messaging out in the community. At the same time, we're also advocating for the continued implementation of structured literacy and more resources for math. So we understand that the school board is in the process of doing their resource allocations and filing RFPs so that we can start to look at those materials. And have those in hopefully in the next year or so that we can be able to improve the quality of instruction, give the teachers something really good to work with. We are also focusing our attention on discipline issues, which are pretty significant now. We knew and anticipated that as children came back into the building that we would be dealing with a significant number of kids with trauma. So we advocated for additional psychologists and drug substance abuse therapists and other things. And we didn't get what we wanted. So now we're in a situation of trying to figure out how to do a lot with what we have. And so we're continuing to advocate and try to understand how discipline, reports of sexual harassment and bullying are being dealt with at the county level, because right now there seem to be some problems and some gaps, and we want to be able to advocate to get some of those gaps filled and maybe share some knowledge and some ideas on how best to do that, and also to try to activate children and have them playing a role in this as well. We are continuing our policy review, which is something that's a bit of our bread and butter work as we look to ensure that APS is continuing a focus on equity, that they're continuing to focus on the fact that there are still performance gaps existing, particularly among Black children. They have been exacerbated during the pandemic, but make no mistake, those gaps were there prior to the pandemic. So we want to continue to ensure that the policies are lining up so that what we hear our elected officials say match the actions that they're taking. So we're going to be looking at the equity policy. APS has an equity policy, and we're going to be looking at the implementation portion of that policy this week. And we're also going to be starting to work on our budget priority letter, because we believe that your budget is your moral statement. You put your money where things are important, and we think that the community should have some say in what's important. So we're going to be doing our budget priority letter again this year. For Dyslexic Edge Academy, and for those of you who might be new, Dyslexic Edge Academy is a tutoring service that took us about 2 years or so to get it set up. But we have a small cohort of children at Drew Elementary School who are learning to read. They're struggling readers, and we're helping them get the skills that they need to be proficient readers through this academy. And we're partnering with Simone, help me out, SD Squared, and our good friends at Virginia Tech. And we started with a small cohort. We're hoping to be able to add some children this month to round that cohort out. And we're also looking and exploring ways to begin to scale this program up in the future. And we'll be looking at how to do that here in Arlington, how to do it in the state of Virginia, as well as how to do that nationally. So that's part of the new piece of this effort that we're doing, and we're really proud of it, and we're really excited that we're able to begin to start thinking about how to expand and how to provide this service to children who need it, because kids who struggle, if your parents don't have resources to spend thousands and thousands of dollars on specialized reading instruction and tutoring, your child just doesn't get it. And we know that, as APS is getting ramped up into structured literacy, there are still children who are going to be left behind. We have children in high school who are having trouble with reading, can't read, who don't write as proficiently as they do. And as these kids graduate and go out of the door, the lack of those skills is really impacting their future. And we want to stop that. So we're working in two directions. So we're advocating for making sure that at the secondary level, There are reading remediation resources available to the teachers, and we're advocating for the teachers to have appropriate training. And then at the elementary level, we're trying to catch them early so that, they have that solid reading and math. So that's, yeah, that's one of our things. We also have some legislation that we're monitoring, and maybe I'll pass it to Simone to talk a little bit about the literacy legislation. Simone, are you here?
I am here. Thank you. Yeah, there's two tracks of legislation that we're following. One is legislation that we want to get behind and support. And one of them is a slew of legislation that goes together for foundational literacy at the elementary level that Decoding Dyslexia Virginia has done a lot of work on. So we are getting behind that. We're also working in tandem with our Virginia State Conference Education Committee to figure out how we're going to, with a united voice, support those those bills on foundational literacy, which is all about evidence-based literacy instruction. There also is a cadre of legislation that we are going to be working with our state NAACP committee to oppose. And these are bills that are antithetical to the NAACP mission and goals, such as charter school bills,
SROs in schools.
SROs in schools. Thank you, Sherrice.
Book banning.
Book banning, banning of teaching racism, and slavery and accurate history in school under the fake umbrella of critical race theory. So we have our work cut out for us. We are not in this work alone, thankfully. We are banding together as a regional force with our partners in other NAACP branches, as well as with the state. So we do have our work cut out for us. We also, this week, wrote to the school board and to Dr. Duran in support to endorse SEPTA's mask letter. SEPTA is a special education PTA for those who don't know. SEPTA did a very brilliant analysis of the legal issues involved in giving students with disabilities equal access to in-person instruction and under the ADA and also Section 504. We endorse that letter. We support it. We support masking in schools, and we will continue to advocate for those efforts. And last but not least, we coming up. Thank you. There's the graphic there. On Wednesday, we are having Professor Kristen Henning come and do a discussion that will be moderated by myself about her new book. It's called The Rage of Innocence. I don't know if y'all can see it, but How America Criminalizes Black Youth. We firmly believe that every teacher and every administrator in APS need to be reading this book. We believe our law enforcement executives need to be reading this book. We believe every parent needs to be reading this book. It is a powerful, powerful account of Professor Henning's experience as a public defender defending youth in the juvenile system, but it also is a reference source. She has extensive resources of research and data around policing and trauma and all that goes into funneling youth into the criminal justice system. And so I encourage everyone, please register, even if you cannot make it on Wednesday, because we are going to be recording it. And if you register, you will get a recording of the session. So I would love for everyone to go out and buy the book and read the book And it's a great book to have because you can refer back to it for, there's chock full of information and data and research in here on everything relating to the juvenile justice system in the context of schools and policing and the history of all of that. So
right, and
looking
that is important here because even though the numbers have been improving in Arlington, we still have significant disparities. We still find that Black children are having disproportionate encounters with law enforcement based on their relative per capita, how many of them are here in Arlington. And we need to continue to address these issues. We can't stop fighting for our children. And so this is just one of the educational opportunities that we're providing for the community to come out and learn more. So thank you. And we look forward to seeing you on Wednesday.
Thank you to both Sherrice and Simone, our Executive Committee at Large, Second VP, and Chair and Vice Chair, respectively, of our branch. A lot's going on. We put the link to the event in the chat twice. I have just put the email in. I remember initially at the beginning of this meeting, if you're interested in serving on the audit committee for a month to review our records, please email the branch. With that said, we are right at time. I want to thank everyone for attending our first meeting of the year. We have about 9.5, 10 months of this administration left. We have a lot of work to do. And we want you to be involved, but we just don't want you to pay $30 again and say, I'm a member of the NAACP. If you want to work on a committee, you are interested in serving on a committee, at this stage, keep in mind that it's ultimately up to the chairs of those committees and myself. We will see what you want to do, how you want to engage. We want to use people's strengths, but also at the end of the day, the mission and objectives of the NAACP come first. All right. With that being said, it's been, I'll stick around for a few minutes, but the meeting for January 24th, 2022 is now adjourned. Thank you for attending.